All right, the Friday night Brazil game looks like it's going down. Packers at the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles favored by 3. The total is right around 49, 48 and a half. And the two guys I like in this game, the first one is Dontavian Wicks for the Green Bay Packers. He's the cheapest Packer wide receiver, and I just think he's the best value in this spot because remember, what did the Eagles struggle with last year? Defending wide receivers. They gave up the most fantasy points in the league to opposing wide receivers. So they go out, they bring in Fangio, and they draft, some cornerbacks. So if you're the Packers, what do? You make them go 4 deep at cornerback. Don't just let them, use some of the guys that they took high in the draft and get away with only having 3 guys on the field. Like, test their depth. So I think Dontavian Wicks is going to see a lot of action in this one and maybe even be part of the game plan. And then on the other side, Jahan Dotson. I think he might have a chance to hit the ground running. Dallas Goedert, the tight end, is questionable heading into the week, but the Packers, remember, they have Jair Alexander on the outside. So he's probably going to be matched up with either A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith most of the game. And then, Keyshawn Nixon plays a lot of slot for Green Bay. That is, I think, a matchup to target. And Dotson will probably be the slot receiver here in Philly, Seems like that's why Washington auditioned him. It's kind of strange to audition him and then trade him to a division rival, but hey, Washington, I get it. They're cleaning house, but Philly just gobbling up division players, Saquon, now Dotson. So, I think he could hit the ground running here again, just because Jair Alexander could force one of Brown or Smith or both, depending on what happens, to perform below expectation. And with Goddard a little banged up, that's just going to free up some targets for somebody. And Dotson's more talented than like the corpse of Julio Jones and Olamide Zaccheaus. And who else did they have there last year? There was another guy. Was it I don't
Quez Watkins?
remember. Yeah, Quez Watkins. Oh man, Quez Watkins. He who just likes to give you an extra 20 net yards on every punt return. Quez Watkins. But yeah, Dotson, even though he had a rough year last year, I do think that he still has some talent. Guy who found the end zone 8 times as a rookie, still has a pretty good touchdown to catch rate, and now he gets an upgrade on offense, and he could be a guy that's out there almost every snap, because if Goddard's banged up, you're probably going to see a lot of one personnel. So that would mean Dotson could get up to 85, 90, 95% of the snaps, even though he's that wide receiver 3. So Dontavian Wicks, Jahan Dotson. All right, let's jump to the main slate. Let's start it off Arizona, Buffalo. The Bills are 6-point favorites. The total is 48. So it's 27.5 to 20.5 projected score in favor of Buffalo. Who do you like?
I like Michael Wilson here at 4,300 of the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride are the clear top 2 targets in this offense, but the number 3 target could vary week to week between Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, maybe even James Conner at times. But I like Wilson as a flyer because he doesn't need that many targets to hit. He's a bigger bodied receiver that can win downfield or in the end zone. So he's the kind of guy that, just 3 to 4 catches could break a slate. So like the value we're getting here at 4,300. I also think he's going to be overlooked because of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, but they could open things up for him downfield. This could be a blessing in disguise for him. So I like investing in Wilson's upside and GPPs only at 4,300 here.
Yeah, and a lot of wide receivers, especially day 2, day 3 picks, they tend to have their breakout in year 2. Like the top picks, a lot of times they break out right away. But guys like Wilson, a lot of times it still takes a year. It used to be like it took 2 years and you would break out in year 3. Yeah. But year 2 now is the sweet spot for guys who don't hit the ground running. And I thought Wilson did acquit himself pretty well even last year. Showed some flashes but just has to become more consistent. And this is a game where, the Bills could be, the Cardinals could be trailing. It should be high scoring. So, I like Wilson as well. I like him as a player.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we got the Patriots at the Bengals. This is the biggest projected blowout of the week. But even though the game script's not really in Cincinnati's favor to pass, this is one of the most pass-heavy teams in the league in terms of pass rate over expected. I believe they are number 2 in my model, just behind the Chiefs. So this is a team that loves to throw the football, and I'm going to go with Andre Yosevach at min price. And he is expected to be their number 3 receiver, unquestionably. Jermaine Burton, the rookie, maybe at some point he breaks into the lineup, but he hasn't been playing in the slot as much. And, reportedly he's been pissing off some people inside the building with his work habits and practice habits and whatnot. So Yosevach, they've been raving about him. He is a big guy who has 4.4 speed. So kind of a big slot type of guy, and apparently he's been watching cut-ups of Larry Fitzgerald, and I think it's Marcus Colston, I want to say. Well, another one of those. No, I don't think it was Colston, but another one of those big slots. So he's got the right idea here. And Joe Burrow, anytime you're talking about a potential top 3 target for him, I think you got to pay attention, especially at min price. So I could see Yosevach running away from the defense for a long touchdown in week 1. And then, everyone will want to play him in week 2 or something like that. So I want to get ahead of that and play him this week, even though there are some questions as to exactly how many snaps he'll play as the number 3. I think it'll be 70% plus for the snap rate for Yosevach.
Yeah, I think for GPPs, you probably want Chase to play. So Yosevach's rostership is held in check because
chalky.
Yeah, if Chase is out, it's like, oh god, everyone's gonna take him at 3K. But you want Chase to play and maybe be limited, and have Yosevach's ownership be lower than it should be, and go off at 3K still.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably consider him as like a cash game punt, honestly, just because I'm pretty sure he's gonna play. Like at least 60% of the snaps.
Yep.
And you're still talking about a Joe Burrow attached receiver. So you could do worse there. All right. Pittsburgh, Atlanta. The Falcons favored by 3, but Mike Tomlin covers the spread as a dog over 60% of the time. So this one could go either way. The total is low. Cousins' first game off the torn Achilles with a new team. Arthur Smith revenge. Who do you like?
I think Darnell Mooney is pretty sneaky at 4,200. It's pretty obvious that, Drake London and Kyle Pitts will benefit from finally having a competent quarterback in Kirk Cousins and a more pass, heavy offense. But Darnell Mooney should benefit from that too. I think it's safe to say, I think he'll be like a 90% routes run type receiver to start. It's a little more uncertain how they're going to use the number 3 receiver. So I think Mooney has a, pretty high floor in terms of playing time. He himself is volatile because, he's more of a downfield threat. He's going to be inconsistent week to week. So that's why I think, for GPP specifically at 4,200, you could do worse. He could absolutely have a blow up game week 1 with, Pittsburgh potentially keying in on Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson could open things up for Mooney. So, I'm not going to have a ton of Moody at 4,200, but you absolutely need to sprinkle him in for GPPs. I think he just has a great combo of, high ceiling and should be fairly low owned. So I think that's the perfect blend when it comes to like week 1 GPPs.
Yeah, he has an outside shot of being a guy like a borderline flex type of play all year because this offense is just all essentially 1-1 personnel. Like you said, going to be on the field 90+% of the time. We've seen him be productive in years past, and that target share is going to be very concentrated between, I think, that top, obviously the top 3, but I think Mooney will be a clear 4th guy, and he'll benefit from single coverage, always going to be playing indoors instead of out in Chicago. So remember, he was the number 1 receiver at one point for the Bears. So he does have some talent. So he'll benefit from, London and Pitts and Bijan taking the coverage. So that's who I would have, that's who I'm looking at as well if I had that game. But let's go to the Titans at the Chicago Bears. And a guy that stands out to me here is rookie top 10 wide receiver Rome Odunze at 4K on DraftKings, because he's in a perfect spot. He is the clear number 3 receiver. But if you're the Titans, you have to game plan for DJ Moore and Keenan Allen first. So, there's just, and you don't have a ton of film on Odunze and how they're going to use him and whatnot. So I think he is one of those guys that could have an absolute blow up week 1. The total's also on the fairly high side, 45.5. I think that might even be selling it a little short here. I think Caleb Williams will have some success. The Titans did revamp the defense, but Awuzie is getting older. Snead is good at corner, but again, those guys will probably be paying more attention to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. So really like Odunze's blow up potential. He has enough talent to not only be the most productive receiver for the Bears on any given day, including week 1, but he could be one of the top scoring receivers on the slate. Like this is a top 10 pick we're talking about, getting the ball thrown to him from the top pick in the draft, that quarterback. So I like the battery here. That's another one I think, if you're betting props, you probably want to get ahead of that one.
Yes.
I think he's a nice week 1 over. All right. Jags at Dolphins, Battle of Florida. This should another close, high scoring game. The spread is Dolphins by 3. The total 49.5. So that's about a 26-23 implied projection in favor of Miami. Who do you like?
Well, similar to you, I think this is the time to invest in rookies while you can. And I'm going to say Brian Thomas Jr. here at 4,700. Very high on Thomas Jr. this year. So want to invest in him early on. This could be the last time we get him for under 5K. This is a tougher matchup. He could face off with Jalen Ramsey quite a bit here. Dolphins have a pretty good secondary, but this is a spot where I think Jacksonville's going to have to drop back to pass quite a bit. So I like his upside here. But I think the true flyer in this game is Malik Washington at 3K.
Yes.
I think he's worth a flyer at this price because Odell Beckham's on the PUP list. Who the hell knows when he's going to come back? And I think Braxton Berrios will, open as the number 3 wide receiver, nominally. But, Washington's surely going to mix in. And if you watch him in the preseason, he doesn't need that many touches to put up some numbers. So in this offense, he could be very dangerous. And it looks like, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are both banged up quite a bit. So they might not play, the full complement of snaps, at least for week 1. So I think Washington could play a decent role here. And, talk about, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are going to open things up for Malik Washington too. And he could score from anywhere. He could score with, just 1 touch, 2 touches. So he's like the perfect 3K flyer with a ton of upside. If he ends up being the true number 3 receiver and or, Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle are limited in any way, he could go off at this price. So love him at 3K right here.
Yeah, and I know some of my friends love to play the anytime touchdown of the guys that we pick on this show. And I think Washington is a very intriguing anytime touchdown bet because, like you said, if you watch him in the preseason, you see the explosiveness. He might get touches at returner. And he might be the number 3 right off the bat. I know we're all kind of waiting for Jalen Wright as the fast Dolphin to kind of break out, but I think Malik Washington might actually break out first, especially the way the receiver room is shaping up. Because if they were happy with Berrios, I don't think you even bring in a guy like right. Washington. So
yeah, there was a preseason game where it wasn't even halftime yet. He had like a 40-yard run, a 40-yard kickoff return, a 30-yard punt return, and of course I had him like over 20.5 receiving yards. He was like wide open for, it would have gone at least 50 yards. And I think it was like Skylar Thompson just threw it, 10 yards past him. But he could have had, a 50-plus yard reception too. So that would have been like 5 explosive plays from different, roles. Just goes to show, how versatile he is. But he could also get designed carries as well.
I totally agree. And if Skylar Thompson he only missed him by 10 yards, it means it's probably one of his more accurate throws. So
True.
The Vikings are going to New Jersey to take on the Giants. Vikings favored by 1. It's been kind of jumping between 1 on both sides. The low total 41, but I do think that there could be some success for the Vikings through the air. So I like Sam Darnold. He's only 5,200 on DraftKings, but if you're stacking him with Justin Jefferson and you want to add another player, obviously Addison, if he suits up, is the top choice. But there are 2 cheap options that I think are worth considering to be a little more contrarian. The first is Jalen Naylor, who kind of like Yosevach has been having a great camp and pretty much has that number 3 receiver role locked down, assuming he's healthy. That's always been the struggle with him. So I know he did miss some practice early in the week, so keep an eye on that. But he'd be at min price for wide receivers, and he can play. He has some upside. I think he had a big game or two in the pros. I want to say it was the end of maybe the 2022 season or something like that. But this guy has flashed some upside in the past, just hasn't been able to fully stay healthy. But if he's on the field, I think he could do work. And then we have Johnny Munt. And when TJ Hawkinson was out, Johnny Munt essentially picked up all the Hawkinson routes, and Josh Oliver, who was usually the number 2 tight end, his role stayed the same. He's kind of the inline blocking tight end, and Munt just turns into, the discount dollar store TJ Hawkinson, running around 75% of the time. And Hawkinson's 2 missed games last year. And Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings, absolutely loves Munt. So I think that's going to continue. And Munt's only 2,900 on DraftKings, so near min price for tight end. So you could go like Darnold, Jefferson, Naylor, or Darnold, Jefferson, Munt, when a lot of people will probably have Darnold, Jefferson, Addison. And you could even throw 3 in there. I mean, this Giant secondary is pretty shaky. So like those 2 guys as sneaky stacking options. All right, before we move on, just want to remind everyone that all of our fantasy football and DFS content this season will be at fantasylabs.com. All of our award winnings and projections, plus all the DFS tools and models you need, over at fantasylabs.com. And you can get $20 off. Just use the promo code FLEX20, FLEX20, at fantasylabs.com/flex. That's $20 off at fantasylabs.com/flex with promo code FLEX20. All right, let's keep it going through the main slate. Carolina at New Orleans. The Saints are favored by 4 and another low total, 40.5. Who do you like in this one?
I'm going to go contrarian here and go with Miles Sanders at 4,500. And, with Jonathan Brooks officially out at least the first 4 games, I am under the impression that Chuba Hubbard will absolutely be the lead back in this offense. I think everybody else has that impression too. So dollar for dollar, Hubbard is the much, much better play at 5,300. However, DFS isn't always as simple as just following logic. That has never won me a GPP. Sometimes it's doing something a little bit bold. And this is a running back situation that could be a little bit more volatile than we realize. This new coaching staff isn't really attached to either back. And Dave Canales has said he wants to be run heavy. So this could be like a hot hand type situation for week 1, especially, where Miles Sanders could surprise us and outscore Chuba Hubbard. So I think in terms of GPPs, it's, smart to have some leverage where if you have Miles Sanders and he does go off here, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if he does, you're going to leap all over all those Chuba Hubbard teams. Sanders is going to be very low owned. So I just think there's enough uncertainty here to where he's probably worth it, especially at 4,500. Again, I would only do this in spots in GPPs, but there has been times where, I pivoted from a guy that I'm trying to think of some examples, but there's been a guy where it's like everybody's gravitating towards his cheap backup that's going to be the starter, and it's actually the backup, like the number 3 back that actually ends up being the GPP winner. So I think this is a spot where you got to consider being contrarian to at least get some leverage in tournaments. I think Sanders could be pretty sneaky in that.
Yeah, it's not like he just had a bad year, but it's not like he's washed or anything. He's going to be 27. It's only his 6th year in the league. Career 4.8 yard per carry average. Until last year, he had, all his stat lines were very good. So new scheme, new coaching staff, better offensive line on the interior. And you mentioned it, like there's no Brooks. So, and Sanders was thought of as a lead back heading into last year. So yeah, it wouldn't be the craziest thing if Sanders, and that would be kind of like the Cam Akers, Kyron Williams situation all over again.
That's a good example. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hey, no, I could definitely see that. I like that. I wasn't even thinking about that, but that's actually a really good call. Houston at Indianapolis. Obligatory mention to Tank Dell. He's too cheap at 5,500. But for the true cheap play, Adonai Mitchell, a.k.a. A.D. Mitchell, rookie wide receiver, early round pick for the Colts. The reason I like him is he has, I think, 2 outs in what could be a shootout. I think Houston's going to put up points against that Colts secondary. But number one, if Josh Downs doesn't play, A.D. Mitchell, he's been taking a lot of slot snaps, and he probably plays, close to every snap if Downs is out, 80% plus. But even if Downs plays, Downs will probably be limited. And Mitchell was in competition with Alec Pierce for the number 3 wide receiver role anyway. So there's a chance, Mitchell plays more than Pierce and, takes some of those down snaps. So either way, Mitchell has, multiple paths to being close to a full-time player. And he has the talent to be the number 2 target even and surpass a guy like Downs, right off the bat. So I really like Mitchell at 3,800. Another one of these rookies I think you want to get on early before everyone kind of catches on. All right, next up we got the Raiders at the Chargers. Another low total, 40.5. Chargers favored by 3. Who do you like in this one?
I'm going to go with another sub 5K running back here. This one I think has a higher floor than Miles Sanders, and that's J.K. Dobbins. And this is another backfield where it's a bit unclear exactly how it's going to unfold in terms of touches, but this should be a much more run-heavy offense than we're used to seeing out of the Chargers. And, Dobbins is coming back from a torn Achilles, which, it's going to be really tough for him to regain his, Ravens form. But all signs point to him being, 100% heading into week 1, like ahead of schedule from what I had expected. So there's a chance he ends up being the lead back for the Chargers out of the gate, even over Gus Edwards. And you mentioned it, he does have more of a history, at least, of being a pass catching back. So I think that, he probably has the higher floor ceiling combo than even Gus Edwards right now. So at 4,900, again, I think for week 1 in these like very murky backfields, I'm willing to take some flyers on these guys because you could pop. And I don't think his ownership will be that high. I don't think there's a lot of buzz around Dobbins right now, but he's in a situation where he could, end up hitting here at below 5K.
Yeah, I know there was a quote in the offseason about Gus Edwards. I think it was the GM said he's going to be our bell cow. But from what I've been hearing, Dobbins has been taking just as many, if not more, first-team reps when he's been healthy. And it looks like he is, knock on wood, coming into the season. So if he can stay on the field, he could be very productive in what should be a run-heavy offense for the Chargers. Next up, we have the Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like the Jaden Daniels, Zach Ertz stack in this one. Daniels 5,700, Ertz 3,600, and I like them individually as well. I think Daniels is going to be a top 8 quarterback against a non-prohibitive Bucs defense. But when you look at who Daniels is throwing to, Terry McLaurin is very talented, but he's never been a big touchdown guy in his career, big red zone guy. He's more, sideline, gonna make some impressive catches and whatnot. But career high is 7 touchdowns, and that was way back in 2019, his rookie year. He hasn't had more than 5 since. So I think Ertz probably is the number 1 red zone target. So you don't have to stack Daniels. You can play him, naked because a lot of his value is expected to come from rushing and scrambling. But if he does throw a touchdown or two or three, I think Ertz is probably the best bet to catch one just by default, just because he's the biggest body that's going to be out here. They're in need of big body guys. I mean, look at what they did. They kicked the tires on Martavis Bryant. I mean, imagine that. They had Bryson Tremaine vying for a roster spot. They ended up trading for, claiming? I don't know. Somehow they acquired Noah Brown, who's another big body guy. So you could tell that's kind of what they need but don't have. But so Ertz is going to kind of be that guy there. At least to start the year, and he should be out playing 75% or so, if not more, of the snaps. That's what he's done in Kingsbury's offenses. We saw this with McBride a couple years ago, where McBride was, everyone was excited about him, but he was just kind of sitting on the bench. And I think Ben Sano, that's going to kind of happen to him too. He might take a few weeks, maybe even half the season, to kind of really hit the ground running. Even Bates, was playing ahead of him because he was blocking. So I do think Ertz is the number one receiving tight end, maybe the number 2 target, and the number 1 red zone target for Daniels. Denver, Bo Nix debut regular season at Seattle with the post Pete Carroll era. You got Ryan Grubb at offensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, former Ravens DC at head coach, but Grubb, so a lot of uncertainty because he hasn't coordinated in the NFL before. And then Denver, I mean, Sean Payton year 2, he's kind of shaping the roster more in his image. The Broncos are 6-point underdog. The total 42 and a half. So a lot of kind of a new look on both sides for these teams. Who do you like?
I got one more sub 5K running back, and it's Jaleel McLaughlin at 4,300. And, Denver's running back room was looking very crowded about a month ago. I remember we were talking about it was really tricky to kind of project how it sorted out, but they cut Samaje Perine last week. So I think that's going to open up some playing time for McLaughlin specifically as a pass catcher, because I consider Audric Estime as more of a direct backup to Javonte Williams, more of a early down grinder. Whereas Javonte Williams is the clear lead back in this offense, but McLaughlin has his own role. He's, a very explosive change of pace back. Again, he can come in on passing downs, but he's the type of, back that doesn't need that many touches to go off. Had a ton of explosive runs last year. I think he had like the highest percentage of runs where he hit over 15 miles per hour on his run. So he's getting good space to run. It really is sort of a dollar store Devon Achane in my mind. So whenever it comes to GPPs, if you can get him at like 4,300, he certainly has the explosive ability to kind of crush at this price. And I think he'll be overlooked here. And again, with Samaje Perine out of the picture, it does clear things up for him to see a couple more touches a game going forward.
Yeah, I think he's one of the reasons they felt comfortable cutting the veteran Perine, even though I'm sure they would have liked to have a veteran, passing down, hurry up back, whatever you want to call it, with a rookie quarterback. But they needed to open up some snaps for McLaughlin and Estime. But Estime, he's passing downs aren't really his thing, at least not yet. So McLaughlin could have a pretty valuable role because Denver is expected to be underdogs in a lot of games, and he was already that change of pace. So if you can add that Perine workload without losing anything, and you're looking at a lot of games where you could catch 4 or 5 balls and still get 6 to 10 carries as well. So he could be surprisingly productive. I like it for GPPs because it's going to be hard to predict, but perfect, best ball and GPP is perfect way to use McLaughlin. All right, Dallas at Cleveland. Browns favored by 2.5. The total 42. So this is a below expectation game for the Cowboys, but I do think a couple of guys still stand out, and because of the matchup, they'll probably be very low rostered. First, Rico Dowdle, just kind of take a shot. I do think Zeke Elliott starts the year as the lead back, but Dowdle has been kind of picking up some buzz lately, and there's a chance he's the one that ends up being the lead back. So even in a tough matchup, if I can get 15-ish touches at 4,600, I'll take it in a GPP. And the other guy is Jalen Tolbert at 3,400. He's going to be the Cowboy number 3 receiver in place of, I think it was a rotation with Michael Gallup last year. And, as the season progresses, I do think that the rookie Flournoy and Jalen Brooks, also could cut into Tolbert's or at least challenge him for that role. But to start the year, Tolbert has been working as that guy. I think, a lot of people that watch the Cowboys closely say he's been the most improved player at camp. So I think now is kind of a sneaky time to invest in Tolbert because you have CeeDee Lamb, been missing practice time, just came back from signing that extension. Then you have Brandon Cooks, who's been missing some practice. So you might have to rely on Tolbert a little more than usual right off the bat. So volume is king. So if he gets a ton of snaps, all he has to do is catch a touchdown at 3,400 and you're in business. So like Dowdle, but also like Tolbert at wide receiver for the Cowboys.